You are listening to the E2C Network, where the Auburn family speaks.
War Eagle Auburn fans, welcome to No Huddle, your source for Auburn football news and discussion, part of the E2C Network. I'm AJ Richardson, and I'm also here with my buddy, Kyle Davis. Oh, man, I'm going to have to redo that.
That's all right. Just start over. That's fine. Hey, listen, that was a great Auburn right wide receiver, but I promise you, I would not be as good as him, even though he was here for like 2 games.
Yeah, he was only there for a little bit. Darn. All right, let's do it again.
All
right. In 3, 2, 1. War Eagle Auburn fans, welcome to No Huddle, your source for Auburn football news and discussion, part of the E2C Network. I'm AJ Richardson, and I'm also here with Kyle Loomis. We're going to be talking about the Gamecocks, South Carolina. We're playing them in Columbia, South Carolina this Saturday, 6 p.m. Central Time. Evening game. I'm just, trying to think through, and Kyle, I want to get your thoughts on, what do you think the team kind of, environment is right now after losing a couple games in a row? What do you think their kind of mentality is towards this game?
Oh, well, first of all, thank you for having me again. Let me step in for Jared while he's away having some family time. It's good to come on here and just hang out with you a little bit like the old days, even though y'all kicked me off the show. So that's fine. I don't hold grudges whatsoever.
Going with that again. Okay.
South Carolina versus Auburn. When we looked at this one on the schedule at the start of the season, when, schedules were first announced, even way further back from that, you looked at the South Carolina matchup and leading up to the Alabama game, and your initial thoughts, oh, good. That should be a good win for Auburn, even on the road before you head into the Alabama game. But here we are with a team that gave up 40 or however many answered points it was to Mississippi State at home. And your questions begin to ask, I think it is reasonable to ask, can Auburn even beat South Carolina? Well, looking at South Carolina's body of work, I would say it's fair to still assume that Auburn can beat. And looking at Auburn's body of work, I would say that this is a game that still very much favors the Tigers. However, I understand the low morale and the fear of potentially losing to South Carolina on the road. So it depends on if you're an optimistic person or a pessimistic person. I try to be, and I tend to be not pessimistic, but an optimistic person. So I still believe that Auburn's the far superior program, despite their struggles. And my hope is they can get the win. Yeah.
And I was looking at ESPN does kind of their matchup predictor. Auburn's predicted to win this game 76%. So there's still, even though, we've had our issues, they're kind of looking at the numbers, the scenarios that can play out. And Auburn has, in a majority of those, 3 out of 4 of those scenarios typically are winning the game.
Right.
Now, do we have, the issues again of this kind of hot and cold offense and defense? And can the defense figure things out? Or was it just, that kind of that one game of issues where that air raid offense just sliced and diced us?
And can we talk about this too? This game is at 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 Eastern. In what world is Auburn versus South Carolina worthy of a prime time slot versus Auburn versus Mississippi State
on ESPN? Like, okay, yeah, if it had maybe been like on ESPN Plus or something, maybe you put it as a prime time. 6 o'clock as much as I love Auburn, I don't think this is worthy of that. This is honestly like a noon game to me.
It is very much a noon game. And I hate to say that for all the noon games out there, because some big programs, that's what all they do is basically play midday games, looking at the Big Ten. But, for the SEC, usually that means you're playing the rink. Either you're the bad team or you're the really good team that's going to either have a pretty surefire loss or win there. Now in hindsight, we don't really know. We would assume that Auburn's going to win against South Carolina. Yeah. But the way they performed last week, it's probably more up in the air. So maybe this is a more intriguing matchup, and maybe we need to stop questioning ESPN. The only angle that I can think of why they chose this, AJ, is because, Auburn and South Carolina only see each other every 6 years and only see each other's, stadiums every 12 years.
Right.
So maybe that played into some of the decisions. This is a matchup at Bryce Williams, that we won't see for another 12 years.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the only thing that I can come up with, because, from what I hear, if it ain't swaying, we ain't staying. That's their slogan I hear.
Yeah. And I also wanted to, at least talk about. So we know Will Muschamp, he's no longer with South Carolina. Had a really bad season last year, 2-8, and now they've got this new up and coming Shane Beamer, and that's to me that's kind of we as Auburn fans are hoping Brian Harsin becomes that new up and comer in the SEC. South Carolina is hoping the same thing to get back to some of the success they've had in the last decade or so. So, Kyle, what's kind of your thoughts on some comparisons to where we're at as an Auburn fan base with Brian Harsin and now South Carolina with Shane Beamer?
Shane Beamer comes from a pedigree, so I think the name alone kind of gives him a little bit more clout, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Frank
Beamer, his dad was
Virginia
legend.
Tech, which would make Ben very upset to hear us talking about. Shout out Ben King. But you can't deny whether you hate him or not. That's a pretty good coach, and he was the OC, I believe, right, for Virginia Tech, I believe, when his dad was there. But either way, he seems to be a pretty good up and coming coach. And I kind of like the hire, honestly, for South Carolina. They seem to do, unless you're Steve Spurrier, they seem to do better when they have some of these kind of like, lower name coaches, not lower name, but just, up and coming ones.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's kind of what South Carolina is by their very nature, is they're just always an up and coming program that could at any moment be up there with you.
Right.
They played in the SEC championship with us. Granted, it was with Steve Spurrier. And they had Garcia. That relationship with Garcia and Steve Spurrier was just one of the most entertaining things ever. They loved and hated each other all at the same time.
Yeah, I remember that.
But you asked me about Harsin. The whole Harsin-Auburn connection, when that started becoming a reality, that was honestly more odd to me than this one, meaning Beamer and South Carolina, because I thought Auburn would go for a bigger name or try or have a chance at a bigger name. Doesn't mean that it was right or wrong either way. I think Harsin I think they both have done exactly what they probably were likely to do.
Mm-hmm.
As I use so many adjectives there. Probably likely.
But I think it's probably around what, they're expected to within, for Harsin, he's not even at his 1 year mark of getting named head coach. Shane Beamer is kind of in the same boat, and he's almost to that point. So like, there's a point where I'm thinking, it's going to take time. Like Shane Beamer is known for being a great recruiter. South Carolina hasn't had the best players in a long time. That's a flow of players that have to come into the program. It's kind of the same thing with Harsin and what he's wanting to do. He doesn't have his guys in yet. We are still working with Gus's guys, and even then, we didn't have the best of classes this last year, and he's got Brian Harsin has to work with that and get things going again with recruits. And Shane Beamer's got his same.
Yeah, in my opinion, you won't see the effects of Carson's first class and whether the ranking is warranted or not until a couple of years. Maybe you might see some effects starting next year, but the year after.
If you have really the only spot that I could see offensive line and maybe wide receivers, if we get some sort of crazy, top level wide receiver next year that makes an instant impact. I think that's about it.
I think Shane Beamer, just kind of talking more about him, has more fighting against him than Harsin did walking in. Auburn by its very nature has a higher pedigree of player than South Carolina does.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see Shane having a great year. That's not what I was looking at when I saw South Carolina. I saw probably exactly what was happening with them so far, losing to the teams that they're supposed to, beating most of the teams that they're supposed to. They've beaten EIU, whoever that is, Eastern Illinois, maybe Eastern Carolina. They've beaten Troy, Vanderbilt, barely. They went out down there and beat Florida, so that's a signature win for them.
Yeah, but it's Florida.
It's still Florida. Come on, that's
Florida. Florida was down in their this last game to Sanford. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, but still, it's Florida. The name alone is a big win for them.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the same comparison a couple of years ago. Auburn basketball beat UConn. Well, they've actually beaten them several times since, and they're about to play them again, actually. But I think it was like 2018. They went up to play UConn and beat them. It was like a big deal for us, even though they were very down, just because of the name alone.
Yeah.
You beat UConn. South Carolina, it doesn't happen a lot. You beat Florida. I'm saying mark that on the Shane Beamer resume right now.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, you say, oh, I beat Florida. That's a big deal, like in most scenarios. I did kind of want to talk about this because, we didn't have our greatest performance against South Carolina last time we played them.
Do we have to talk about this?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Because we like, self-inflicting ourselves with these memories. Do you think the players come out and have redemption on their mind? It's a new coaching staff. Like, I know it's different, but do you think that's a motivation for these players?
Is it for some players? Yes. I think based off the results of the last game, that's the furthest thing from most of those guys' minds at this point. The redemption is not because of last year's game. The redemption is because of last week's game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the last week's game is going to be a lot more fresh on their minds, and instead of, something that happened in a previous season.
Yeah. I just, this is a South Carolina team where they have been able to beat a team like Florida, despite how much Florida has struggled this year. And the clock is on for Dan Mullen at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So you can, as I said, and tried to make people aware of Mississippi State, you cannot discredit this. I just feel like despite the struggles, despite what we're all feeling right now, Auburn is still miles ahead of South Carolina, but they do have a great defense from what I'm told. So that's a little troublesome. We have not done well against some great defenses. So that's going to be probably the matchup there. Who wins, Auburn's offense or South Carolina defense?
Yeah, I think that may be a very key one to look for. Let's get into our players to watch for this game. We'll do kind of, Kyle, the same format that I do with Jared. We'll talk about our offensive player, defensive player, and special teams player for Auburn that we'll be watching in this game, and kind of why you picked them. We'll start out with offense. On offense, who are you going to be watching for Auburn?
Offense, it's more of a collective, and it's the offensive line. For those people that know me and have been on the YouTube channel, they know that I harp on this. Football is a game of inches. Football will not be successful long-term or consistently without a proficient, acceptable offensive line. And I'm not calling a player out. I'm calling the whole unit out. Yeah. And I think the results will back me up on that. I have no problem saying that to their faces because I have the results to show that. They have improved in some areas in their pass blocking sometimes, but they are absolutely horrendous at run blocking. And that is what it is. Can they create a run game? If they cannot, once the struggles start happening in the passing game, whether it's Bo having a bad game, I don't think he'll have. I probably should save that for a second. Well, whoever the quarterback is has a bad game. If the receivers start dropping the ball on top of that, then we're going to have the spiral happen that's happened here. So offensive line, from this point forward, it is on you, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good one. And I mean, I'm just thinking back to, when Harsin came in, one of, he still kind of preaches it, or he talks about having that tough, blue collar mentality. That starts with the offensive line. Mm-hmm. And if we're not having that, Harsin is not going to be happy. We're not moving the ball down the field like we need to. The player on offense I'll be watching, I just think we need to have our run game going. So I'm going to say Tank Bigsby. I mean, I would have thought he'd had more than 40 yards this last week, and we didn't.
He was on track to do it for the first quarter there. At least he was having some success, and it just fell apart.
Right. And again, that's a weird thing. Like when your offense is running the ball well, for it to just go away. I don't know if that comes back to play calling,
right,
or maybe it comes back to like your players to watch, offensive line, maybe a combination of both.
I think there's more to it than just blaming one specific person or one specific unit. You can place blame in other areas, but in my opinion, this game hinges upon the performance of the offensive line, but mainly in their run blocking ability. I do want to address this, though. We're recording this a little bit in the past when you're actually hearing this, and there's some rumors and discussion about some players that may be missing. We do not know that officially at this point. But I just want to put it on the record here that we're kind of talking around that because, and we all know, I think most people know what we're talking about and probably know
Right.
the answer at this point. So
Yeah.
that's why we're dancing at this point.
Yeah, exactly. For all we know, by the time this comes out, there may be some official news about it. But yeah, we're kind of again dancing around that. Who's your player to watch on defense? We've got, I mean, some improvements to happen this on defense, but who do you think on defense, will make an impact in this game?
I'd like to see a little bit more push up the middle, whether that's Tony Fair or who else rotates in that position.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess you could say the entire defensive line, but it's not even that. I think that Tony's had a bad game. He got a bad call on him in the last game, but I think the edge rushers have been good at times. They have that talent to be ability, but I'd like to see a little bit more from that. I think Tony had a great start to the season and it's been kind of quieted off there. And, that could be for a number of reasons there, but I'd like to see whoever's at defensive tackle, the middle of the defensive line, especially Tony Fair. I'd like to see that name being called a little bit more, creating or making the pocket collapse. Because, traditionally it's the edge rushers that get in there and get the sacks.
Yeah.
Unless you're Nick Fairley, who's just a beast, or Derek Brown. But I'd like to see that pocket being pushed back into the quarterback a little bit more from the middle portion of it. And I think that's going to help, some of the struggles that we've had with getting the pressure on the outside as well.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, because I know when we were playing Mississippi State, it seemed like Tony Fair wasn't in there. And, he's kind of sometimes in there just to more stop things up in the middle.
Big boy.
He's a big boy. But it didn't seem like we were playing him nearly as much. Maybe it's to rest him. Maybe it just wasn't part of our game plan. But yeah, I definitely want some more production out of him. I'm going to actually kind of call out a couple of players just because I think that they've started to emerge in the secondary. And I know we've kind of bashed on the secondary a little bit, but these two players have kind of stepped up a little bit. Ladarius Tennyson and both Donovan Kaufman have stepped up big time. And I think watching them this next game is going to be my key. I know Roger McCreary is going to do his thing. Jalen Simpson, he's been playing well too. I think they're going to do their thing. But I want to see, after both of them have had, 9 and 7 tackles, respectively, I want to see both of them have another good game in the secondary.
Yeah, Coach Harsin
just have that one game.
Coach Harson's addressed, how excited he is, especially about Tennyson, how much energy he brings out, how excited he's about to be there. And he addressed the mistakes he's made and said, a lot of that's just due to not having had the reps yet.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to make mistakes. Don't be shocked when that happens. But I like the athletic ability. I like the energy when you see guys like that out there. I'm hoping they are starting to turn a corner to give, even though the season's kind of drawing to a close here, some more support to Roger McCreary, some more support to Jalen, who's been stepping up. That's what's really been lacking here, is that, Auburn in the defensive back area has needed more than just Roger. And it's not going to get done if you just have one great player out there. You're going to need a couple others as well.
Hey Auburn fans, I want to take a quick timeout from this episode to bring your attention to something very special. Here at the E2C Network, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best content for Auburn fans out there. And best of all, it's free to you. But just because it's free doesn't mean there aren't costs, especially when you have a library of hundreds of podcasts, videos, blogs, and more. Many of you have reached out and asked how you can support this network in the past. Well, now I have your answer. It's called the E2C Network Booster Club over at patreon.com/E2C Network. There you'll find a membership monthly reward system where you can sign up for as little as $1 and get different perks at different tiers. Some of those perks include things such as apparel, eligibility to join us on future podcasts, recognition as an E2C Network booster, exclusive communications, and bonus content that is available nowhere else. If you love this network and want to help us keep producing podcasts like this one, please head on over to patreon.com/E2C Network to join the E2C Network Booster Club. You can also get there by going to our website, e2cnetwork.com/support. Whether you decide to join or not, we are still so appreciative that you would support us by just listening and being here, because each and every one of you is part of our E2C Network family. Well, that's it. Timeout's over. Let's get back into the episode.
All right, let's go and move on to special teams. Who are you going to be watching for Auburn? It felt like special teams had, they've had some issues, but where are you going to be watching to, maybe make an impact this week?
I think I can say this without revealing, again, because we were recording this off in the past from information that may be out there. Most people saw definitively Anders Carlson on that fake kickoff came away limping.
Mm-hmm.
What's the extent of the injury? That's the easy one to pick in the special teams, but because of the nature of an injury, and I don't know if that was his kicking leg or his planting leg, either way, the planting leg is just as important as the kicking leg. That's got to be, unfortunately, I'm taking the easy route here, but that's got to be the storyline, because he's been crucial to us scoring points at points this season. And without a kicker, I sure hope our backup's ready.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they got to do all of the different things Anders does well, kickoffs to field goals to points after attempts. I mean, there's a lot that Anders has just because he's a senior. He's done it and done it well. And to not have him for a game, hopefully won't be too bad if it does come out that he can't play, but always hoping that he comes back and he has is able to kick well.
I feel like I've just jinxed him, and we know the answer by the time you're listening to this, but I just feel like I jinxed him now. Like I know I have no role or responsibility in that. That's just how I feel.
Yeah. I'm going to be watching because Jared always takes my guy, Oscar Chapman. I love Oscar Chapman. And if we end up having to punt this game, I want him to do really well. I mean, he's had some games where he's averaged over 50 yards, and that's phenomenal for a kicker. So definitely want to watch him, make sure that he does well.
Yeah, he's been crucial to, setting the defense up a lot for what has been a struggle for them this year. But he continues to show up. He's probably been the most consistent part of our special teams, but in some ways defensive structure this year.
Yeah. And even people are going to probably look at some of his numbers and say, oh, he only punted it, 38 yards.
But then you've got games where he punted it 7 times and punted it an average of 47 yards.
Right. And so, that one time that he, kicked it a little bit shorter, hey, there was no return. So you almost have to look at the net of how much the player returned it. Right. And if there's no return on a 39-yard, punt, so be it. I think that's a pretty good punt in most books. All right. So let's talk about our score predictions, and then we'll move on to an Auburn fan perspective of the SEC. Score predictions. So preseason, I predicted we'd win by 14. Jared predicted 14 as well. I think that's, kind of reasonable considering what we thought, new coach for them, like it was for us. But I don't know. I might have to change it a little bit. We'll have to see, just because of the recent trends. But Kyle, first, before I get into my score predictions for this game, I wanted to kind of hear what your thoughts were on how this game would kind of play out.
See, this is where I'm at a disadvantage, because normally I wait to Wednesday night on our preview on the YouTube channel for this game, and I let the listeners help me decide on some of these things. I mean, honestly, I think people say I'm just saying that just so people will come. No, they actually have helped change my opinion about the score before, because they've given me some insights. I don't claim to know everything. So I'm going to give you an early prediction. It might change, though, because I rely so much on the perspectives of our little family within the Auburn family over there on the channel. But 14 points seemed like a likely scenario for a win for Auburn at the beginning of the season, and even in the middle of the season, with some questions unanswered at the point of this recording, and some struggles that have happened. That seems very much in question. I'm going to lower it down to a 10-point win margin. I will say, I'm going to say 23-17 Auburn wins in South Carolina.
All right.
Very likely to change by the end of the week, though. By the time you're hearing this, we'll have had that live stream, so don't be shocked if it's a little bit different.
Yeah, because honestly, when I'm thinking back, I don't honestly expect this Auburn team, and maybe they prove me wrong, but I don't see them scoring 40 points. at least against a good South Carolina defense. They're not great, but like they're pretty good. Like they've been doing their job. And again, I don't see us scoring a whole ton. I think our defense had their gut checked this last week. I think they get their act back together. I think we score, say like somewhere around like 35, something like that points, because our offense can move the ball. Just they have to do it more consistently. Defense does their job.
Our offense has the ability to do it, but are the key pieces there that have been shown the propensity to do it? That is the question.
Right. I think I'm going to stick with 14 now. I think Auburn wins by 14 is in the playing cards. Sure, if something else happens, we have some players out that are key, that could probably change. But as it stands right now, 14 points seems about right for me. All right, Cal, let's transition to this last little segment. It actually started with Ben King and I. We just started looking around the SEC and just started a lot of times laughing and just thinking how crazy the SEC is, especially week to week, how much changes. And a lot of the upsets, a lot of the craziness that happens in the SEC. Let's kind of break down a couple of games that kind of stood out to me. One of the big ones this weekend was number 15 Ole Miss facing number 11 Texas A&M. I thought maybe this was going to be a key game. If Auburn had come out with the win this last week against Mississippi State, potentially.
Thanks for reminding me of that.
I know, right? Potentially, if everything fell Auburn's way, we still could have made it to the SEC championship. It's probably not going to happen anymore unless I don't even think it's not even possible.
No, don't even give them hope, AJ. like literally. Folks, it's done. It's over with. Yeah. I mean, literally, the heavens have to open up for Auburn to make the SEC championship, and that ain't happening. It is. And I hate to sound that way because I'm an optimist by nature. Obviously, the ball is an oblong shape. It can bounce a certain way in just the right direction, but there's a lot of variables that have to have. There's not the one variable that we needed to go our way did Ole Miss, Texas A&M, but we had to take care of our business, and we didn't. So that's it. Yep. I mean, really, it is what it is.
That's pretty much it. Another game that happened that I thought was kind of, I don't know. I did not expect this game to go to overtime was Arkansas versus LSU.
Really? You didn't expect that to go over overtime?
I mean, I am not impressed with LSU. Maybe it's just me. But again, they fight for their coach, and I don't know. Maybe I was expecting Arkansas to kind of just, run LSU. But it was down in Baton Rouge, so craziness always happens down there.
Yeah, I'm. It's not that I'm not impressed with Arkansas, but they're just about as flip floppy as we are in their level of success. But they got the boot win. That's always interesting to me to see their trophy and how I feel like it's going to break when they wave it around because it's so flimsy looking. It's a cool thing though. You see all these rivalry trophies, and that's one of my favorite ones because the state.
Where's our stupid Iron Bowl? I want to have an actual Iron Bowl.
Well,
Is that too much to ask for?
We have the ODK sportsmanship trophy. That's a thing. They don't make a big deal about it, but that's the trophy that's presented at the Auburn and Alabama basketball game every year.
I want the actual a bowl. It's called the Iron Bowl. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too literal about this.
I would be fun to have that, but I think that's for rivalries that don't have the attraction that Auburn and Alabama alone have. So we don't need that, if you catch my drift. Arkansas and LSU, that to create more of a rivalry there, they have to have something like a boot to.
Which, I mean, if you ask most college fans in general, they'd be like, Arkansas and LSU is a rivalry? Really? I've never heard this. I mean, the number or the stat that I saw, this was Arkansas's first win over LSU since 2015. So so to me, that's not really a rivalry. But
the bad thing for LSU is once Texas comes into the SEC, Arkansas and Texas have more of a rivalry than Arkansas LSU, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be the interesting thing. And then you've got the Oklahoma and Texas rivalry. So really that's going to force the situation. But then Texas A&M's got Texas too. So it's kind of LSU. And then, you'd say Alabama, then Auburn's got Alabama, and Alabama has Auburn. It's kind of one of those things where somebody who really doesn't have a true rival is kind of stuck in they're everybody's rival. And that's why we all hate LSU.
That's probably right. Yeah. Georgia ended up handling Tennessee this week, 41-17. Not much to write home about.
But Tennessee showed a little bit of fight there at the beginning.
Mhm.
I've been somewhat impressed with Tennessee this year for a beleaguered program. They at least kind of at the beginning said, okay, all right. And then you flip the channel for a second and Georgia did what Georgia does this year.
Right. And their defense comes out to play. I mean, yeah. And somehow their backup quarterback is still able to, play well. And it's just really crazy. It's just crazy to me. This was one, and Kyle, I know you were in the stadium. They showed a couple highlights from the Florida Samford game when Samford went up 42-28. Samford was ahead by 2 scores. What?
It's crazy.
Are you kidding me?
Absolutely crazy.
That was weird. And then Florida came out second half and did, what an SEC team should do.
Is that what an SEC team should do? Give up 52 points to Samford?
No, I'm saying like their offense came out the second half. But yes, I agree. 52 points to Samford. Like this wasn't even a good Samford team. This was like a team that I think it was like 3-4 or something coming into this game.
Yeah, look, it's always funny to watch Dan Mullen suffer, cousin Eddie, and just watching that clock continue to tick for him is just
right.
The best part about it was AJ being in the stadium like you were, was they kept showing us the highlights from us in between, timeouts for our game. And so the one play happened where the guy ran it back on kickoff for Samford. And then literally 2 minutes later, when they had, I guess, an injury timeout or something, they flipped it back over and Samford had the ball again and scored a touchdown. And we're like, What the heck is going on? Because, it happens every once in a while. Georgia State almost did it to us, where these lower teams in terms of, their power and their talent level and depth, just somehow work up there and have one of their best games against these teams. Anybody can beat anybody on a given Saturday. And, but it's just Samford, wow. I mean, it's like they put all their eggs into that basket and nearly came away with it. They should be proud regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. A small team from a private school in Birmingham almost beat a SEC team. That's pretty impressive.
It is.
I'm going to save the Missouri South Carolina game to last because I want to rant at the end. Okay. Kentucky beat Vandy 34-17. I don't think there's much to talk about there. Bama beat New Mexico State 59-3. Not much to talk about there. But here we go. Kyle, I want to get your thoughts because there was a similar play.
Similar? It's the exact same, AJ.
Yeah. In the Missouri versus South Carolina game. Quarterback, coming, he I don't know. It just looks so similar. And there was no targeting on that call. But yet for TD Moultrie, there was targeting. Why?
Again, I will say this. I don't know who can help make these decisions, get these rendered, whether it's Sankey, SEC office, whether it's Harsin needs to go to him. He needs to take the clip of I can't even get it out, Missouri and South Carolina, and the clip of Auburn and Mississippi State, play them side by side and tell me what is the difference in these two plays.
Yeah.
And explain to me why this one has my player sitting out this week in what is now an important game for our season, and why this one has their player still enjoying, the second to last game of their season. Explain that one to me. And if you can't, then you need to do the right thing. Even though it sets the precedent that you're wrong, you need to do the right thing and overturn this. I believe it's happened before where the sitting out portion has been overturned. There's nothing you can do for the game. And we're not saying the game is, going to be changed because of that or would have been ultimately changed. But they are the exact same play, minus a different player.
Yeah, it reminds me. So my mom's a math teacher, and she, like any teacher, they're grading things. And, one student would work a problem incorrectly one way. And then, just like a good teacher, you try if another student, does the same mistake on a math problem, you try to, mark them off the same amount of points, equal service. This didn't seem to be equal service. This seemed to be like,
you know what it is, AJ? Now that you've done your math analogy, we've got one group of officials decided that we're going to just do regular math. We got the other officials that said, "Oh, we're going to do this stupid Common Core thing." And is how we're going to decide whether this is, it's like if we carry this over here, then we could say maybe this one's targeting. So maybe we could actually call this and not look stupid, as opposed to just saying, you know what, we've already made a couple bad calls in the targeting this game. Probably don't need to make this one just so that we can say that we did it.
Right. Yeah. Maybe that's it. I like that analogy. The Common Core versus, the normal math.
Two things that have destroyed the society. And I know this is hyperbole, but just go with me here. Common Core and targeting. We fix that, we fix society.
That's it. Those two things. That's it. All right, Kyle, any other final thoughts before we get out of here? Anything else about South Carolina?
Yeah, a couple things. Again, AJ, thank you so much for letting me come back on the show. Thank you for Jared for letting me step in while you're doing family time. I hope I didn't, overstay my welcome and rant too much in the 2 episodes that we've done this week. But again, things have been a little raw with everything that's been going on. But I enjoy hearing your perspectives every week, obviously, as your editor, but getting to engage you guys every once in a while. And I hope I brought the Ben King out for you this week.
There were some great golden rants in there. I loved it. So I appreciate you coming on.
Of course.
How can the people stay in touch with you?
If you want to find me, you can do so on Twitter at TigerEye24, and be sure to also follow our YouTube channel where we do weekly live streams, not just for football, not just for the other sports like basketball, but we do anything Auburn, anything and everything. That is what we do. So follow that if you want some more content outside of the podcast.
Right. And there's been some really cool stuff. Even y'all have done some live streams about uniforms and just like interesting topics that are, not the typical thing. So always bring some interesting perspective over there.
If it's orange and blue, it's what we do.
I love the phrase. I love it. And that's very true. All right. And you can find me on Twitter at AJAY_. It's always great to be an Auburn Tiger, and War Eagle.
War Eagle. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on the E2C Network. On your way out, I want to remind you to stop by e2cnetwork.com. It's your one-stop shop for all our content across our podcast, YouTube channel, and much more. To stay up to date with us, make sure you're following social media accounts such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. While our content here may always be Auburn sports heavy, if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. War Eagle.